All right. So for bunker chat this week, and my goal is to do these fairly often. Not out of fear, but I like to stay prepared. I think that's something everyone should do, and think ahead. And think ahead. And the following is an excerpt from a live stream and live stream quality. Nonetheless, hopefully you find this video beneficial and helpful. I am not an expert, and all things said are from my findings and are my opinions and only a start. There are many ways to go about these things. So this week in my bunker chat segment, I want to talk about plans and planning a little bit. This is something I do personally. I could do better, but most certainly need to work on more with the communication of it to my family and with others. So one thing I want to focus on here is starting better planning and organization. As things pick up in the world, whether it be weather things or crazy stuff, definitely staying planned and organized is what's going to set you apart from possibly just storing up piles of stuff versus being ready. It's definitely something that can set you apart, and it will start to build muscle memory. It'll allow you to help communicate things with your family better. And so developing plans is an excellent part of your preparedness plan, if you will. And so I got something here I'm going to talk about, but let's see. I'm sure some of the people in the path of these storms are wishing they had planned ahead. Yeah. And, I'm sure they are. And there's plenty of times I wish I'd planned ahead. Plenty, trust me. Acting reactively is something that I find myself doing far too much. And so by putting in a little thought, whether it be a few minutes a week or a day or whatever you have, into a little bit of planning, it's just going to give you that much of an edge on whether you have a hardship or emergency coming. And so, or something, and we all have different things that pop up. My wife really got me thinking, because she has been asking me over the last few weeks, what are our plans for this or for that? And I can tell her some, but most of my plans, as a lot of people, I guess, tend to be up in my head. And I think, well, I have these things. I have flashlights and I have, what it may be for if something happens. But when something happens, the last thing you want to be doing is running around and trying to figure stuff out. So what I was going to do here was, let me get in here. I'm going to set up my other camera here, and I'm going to do a little example. Get in here. I'm going to do a little example of some pre-planning and how to get started. When you think about preparedness planning or setting up any type of plan for this type of stuff, let me back up a little bit. So what I wanted to go through was a simple way to start and kind of where to start. So I want to go through just kind of how to approach it. If you haven't thought about planning yet, how to start that. So there's different types of preparedness planning, of course. You may have plans, get home plans, or who gets the kids if something happens, or a power outage, or what do we do if we don't have water? What do we do in case of a tornado or in case of a hurricane? Do we have those supplies? So these are all questions you may be asking, and it can be very overwhelming as to where you start. Hopefully that helps. And what I'm going to do is just kind of show a simple way that I like to start. And what my plan is to take my simple design that we're going to do here and expand upon that. Now I have lots of paper because I'm going to pick one example or one thing that may happen that I'm going to be ready for. And then the idea is to take this paper and expand upon that, to use it to develop and talk to a plan with my family. also to use it to see what supplies I need, and I can take that and where are those supplies in my house and ready them for that. So I can use this simple little thing we're going to do, draft we're going to do, as a tool. So this is not all encompassing. This is used to be as a draft that can be a tool you can use to then go and get supplies you need, to organize those supplies and develop plans. So what I'm going to do is I just picked one thing, one plan I'm going to make for one thing I'm going to prepare for. And this is something that we have happen every now and then. It's something that's definitely on my mind as a big concern, and that's power outages. It's on my mind as a concern because a lot of our food and things that we have are in freezers, so I want to back that up. But if you're having disasters and stuff, this can be a huge problem. So we're going to go ahead and start here, and I'm just going to write power outage. There we go. So this is a plan we're going to start on. What if the power goes out? Right? Okay. And so on here, under power outage, there's going to be maybe some questions that I can put in here. And the reason I'll put these here is so I can address them later. Some things to think about that might be encompassed with a power outage, but not necessarily on this paper. So I've listed a few things, and this is some questions. So and I don't know how, let me lower this maybe. Are we all home? The reason I write this question is because this can be a big one in any disaster, but especially power outage. First of all, are we going to have to regroup? Am I going to have to go get the kids or things like that? So this could be a big question. That's why I write it here. Let's see. Can we drive? So that would be another big question. If you can't drive or your cell phone's not working or something, the power outage may be a bigger problem than we can necessarily just address here. That could be like an EMP or something like that, right? Okay, so, and you can keep going, and I will leave a little bit of space, but just leave some questions there so that I can get back to that maybe later with some bigger things. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is draw a little line here from my power outage. And we're thinking, I need to break this down a little bit. So let's put another little circle here, right? And this is going to be maybe how long's the power outage, so I know what I'm preparing for, what I'm facing. So over here, let's put short term. This is going to be a short-term power outage. This is going to be less than a day. So a day or less, short-term power outage, how we would handle that. Then maybe we'll come over here. We'll draw another little one. Maybe a couple. All right. And we're going to be looking at maybe a midterm. You're looking at 1 week or less. So this 1 week can seem very long term. Here, what I'm thinking of is probably more of your like 3-day preparedness, your 72-hour type thing, something like that. But up to maybe a week. And then we got our long term, over a week. And the reason I'm dividing it up kind of like this is because you're going to need to have a preparedness plan or be prepared a little bit differently for these different situations. And then over here, we have the holy crap Flintstones era. There we go. So these we're all going to address a little bit differently. So over here, let's start with short term for our example. And we're going to want to list a few things under short term. And this is how are we going to deal with whatever we got up here, maybe water shortage, power outage, things like that in the short term. So if it's less than a day, what am I going to need to do, or what am I going to need? So first of all, our bigger questions, are we all home? Right here, I'm kind of assuming we're all together. You can put other little circles that don't assume that. And so over here, I'm going to put what might we need. So it's going to be a day, possibly, I don't know if it's day or night, but flashlights and lighting, right? So I'll write that on there. And then this gives me a bubble of things. Maybe I need to buy flashlights and lighting, or maybe I need to organize this into a bin where it's readily able to get to. Thinking if the lights are off, do I have maybe a backup little light that can guide me to these things? Something like that. All right, let's see. Maybe we got another bubble. So short term, less than a day. We may not need to worry about our fridges and freezers. Now, of course, you don't know if it's short term. You might be planning for it to be long term. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get out generators. Probably the easier ones to get, solar generators, things like that at this time. I'm going to ready these things. So I might need some generators to power fridges, and I'm going to write fridges, freezers, just to remind me. Right? Okay, and you can keep adding, different things that you're going to need and fill that out. And then once it gets too full, maybe I just take this little circle on another page, put that in here, and then start expanding on that. And this is going to be rough drafting. Okay, so moving over, midterm, 1 week or less. So this now, how do we know we're in midterm? Well, it's gone over a day. Maybe we're into that second day. There's still no power, right? Okay, so all of these first things in the short term are going to apply. I'm going to need my generators. I'm going to need my flashlights. By this time, I probably have already hooked up vital things like freezers, right? And stuff like that. And so this is going to remind me in the short term, do I have gas on hand for these generators and power? Okay, so I can jot that down. So maybe I'm hooking up these vitals. Midterm, 1 week or less. I'm going to have to think about security probably in here too. Right? If power's out everywhere and you're noticing that in the yard, this may actually be a time, depending on your situation in your plan. And this is going to depend, mate. Do you know? So look, here's another question. And this is why by going through this, do you know why? So maybe you know a power pole's down or something like that. Power's going to come back on. Well, if other people probably know why, you may not have a security issue. But if people don't know why, you may be moving into a bug out location or situation. And so that would involve its own things. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all of this and fill all of my own out, but this is just a little example of how you can start doing some preparedness planning. So maybe there's a power outage. Let's say over here we have get home plan, right? And so from here we have pick up boys, pick up kids. Who's going to do this? This may be whoever's closer. So you may have who's going to get the kids? Well, whoever's closer. Are they at school? We may have a list of questions here, so this might look a little bit different, but we're starting to plan it out. And then maybe we have some other things on here. Get home plan, right? So can we drive? And so it may be on foot. So you may have to look at what items do you have, such as EDC gear on hand. So maybe you need to look at your EDC gear and what you have on hand. Anyhow, there's a whole lot of ways you can go about this. This is just something I wanted to give as a little bit of an idea of how to start your planning, how to do some rough draft for preparedness planning, and then use these as a tool to come up with, some written plans, maybe more organized things to develop your items where they are, and then to also develop plans that you can talk about with the family. So this is something that I am going to be focusing on here quickly with a little bit more urgency, just as things are carrying out. Landfill's saying here, during a real crisis, your brain will be fried. Yes. And having this plan written out can help a ton, most certainly. So first of all, everyone thinks when it happens, I'll go and I'll find these things, I'll gather them up in my house, get them together. No one, you don't know when an emergency is going to happen. Sometimes you're lucky enough to get a little bit of warning. Hey, the hurricane's coming, the storm's coming, prepare. Sometimes you do not. And by coming up with these plans, and whether you're spending a few minutes a week, an hour a week, or every other few weeks, maybe you come back to your plan and you're like, well, I got 20 minutes. Let me figure out something for 20 minutes. So you pick one of your bubbles and you're like, let's work on this. Do I have some of the things for this bubble? Can I plan this out a little bit? By doing that and keeping your mind active, even if it's only a little bit, geared towards that a little bit, you're going to start building some of that muscle memory as well. So that way, you know, when something bad happens, when all the power drops, and it's never at a convenient time, by the way. Bad things like this never happen at a convenient time. So all the power goes off. Do you know where your lights are, where your kit is, your flashlight? Do you know where your paper or your plan is, or things that can help you? The last thing you want to be doing is looking for that type of stuff in that time. So for example, where I have our lights and those things I keep, I have a little emergency light that will click on so I can find those things quickly and move from there. And then I add different things like that. So that was my bunker chat preparedness little area thing I wanted to talk about, and it's planning. I just want to encourage you guys to all plan. And with that planning, the good thing about these bubble charts, I did want to say this. So the good thing about these is something kind of cool you can do. So this is something I learned. I do a lot of management. That's kind of where I work a lot of times, is in management and at different places. And I heard this from someone in one of the trainings, and it actually comes from Disney anyways. But they were saying in their brainstorming sessions, they do kind of like this when they're coming up with different things. One thing, and I don't know how true this is anymore, but one thing they used to say was, nothing's off the table. So that means if you write, I should have a bunker on the moon. I don't know why you'd want that or why you'd write that, but just thinking of something crazy. Jot that in a bubble maybe, or as an idea. Might be completely ridiculous, absolutely, but there might be a little bit of something that spurs some thought in there or something. So I may put in here, I'm in the desert, so I may put under a water one, dehumidifier. Now, can I get enough water out of a dehumidifier, like a little household one, to give the animals, the plants, and us, and keep us going? Probably not. Not unless I have an enormous one. And even that, you got to filter and stuff. However, if I put that in a bubble dehumidifier, that may spur my mind to something that someone had showed me. I think it was Verna, actually. And it was these big things in the desert. They set up these huge screens that catch the dew in the morning, and they fall down. And so not quite dehumidifier, but it's pulling it out of the air. So I might put something like that on there. And you can slowly build from there. So something you can do, and I do encourage, is don't leave anything off the table. Now, no matter how crazy your idea sounds, throw it in a bubble somewhere off to the side. And that may be something that could save you, or could cause you to think outside that box, to think out of the norm. So often when you get caught in that thinking of the norm, that's when you can lose it. And, you know, for an example, there's people that get lost in the woods and they don't know anything about the woods. They're not nature people. They think the norm is they need their food. It comes from the grocery store or the restaurant or something like that. And they'll get lost in the woods and they starve to death and die. Well, there's food all around you. You can eat a pine cone. You can eat roots if you know what you're going for. Anyways, I kind of went on a rabbit trail with that. Oh, Ed, I'm glad you said that. It's a good idea to assign specific duties to a specific person to lessen the overlap and strain. That is an excellent point. Yes. And so this is kind of that triage thing. So when there is a disaster, this is when you want to tell, not just, hey, someone do something. You. So let's say we know the water's going off. It's going to be out of the faucet soon, or power outage is out, and we know that's all citywide. And so water stations may be going down. All right, so what do? You go fill the water bob in the tub. You go get the important paperwork that we need and that we prepared and put aside in a bag. You go grab the food. You give certain tasks. And so part of planning and doing this too is you can actually even write one out that has different people in it. And so you can write power outage, or maybe bug out, or something like that. And then in each bubble, you put a specific person and their tasks. What do they do? Okay, so bug out time. We got to get ready to go. We got 20 minutes to get our things, get in the car. I prepared some of that ahead of time. I taped this up to the door, pow, and it says Matt grabs food, water, loads car. Spicy mom grabs important paperwork and whatever. And Farmer Casey feeds all animals, overfeeds all animals, or something like that. But definitely part of planning and great thing to do. All right. And with that said, we are at about an hour here. So kind of to draw things back to my whole theme tonight was think outside, no box required. And then encouraging you guys as well to start thinking about plans, spending maybe 20 minutes a week on coming up with some basic plans, some good starts, and an easy way to draft some things so that way when things do happen, because life is full of those rocks in the stream, right? Like I talked about in my rant, in the river and those rapids and storms, it's full of that. And so when those do come, they may hurt, and you may have an opportunity to strengthen yourself and learn some valuable lessons, but you can also prepare a little bit for that. So with all that said, tonight I just want to encourage everyone to think a little bit better, to plan a little bit better, to plan, to prepare, and to go out and perform it. And so with all that, make sure you go at this week with purpose. Thank you guys for showing.
Remember to hit the thumbs up and subscribe.
Gooey.
Party pooper.